So we heard a myth, right? And one of the things we're doing at KlearNow is we're putting together some additional layers of technology in our framework, right? So the first section we're going to look at is IQ 0, right? That's the input layer. So most of you know, most of you who are in this business know, it's still managed by what? What is it? Email, right? Those of you in operators understand you get hundreds of emails a day, besides all of you getting hundreds of emails anyway, right? What those operators have to do is they have to break those emails down in order to determine, like, what do I have all the information for an entry, right? Track and trace frameworks, upper side reporting. So what we've done here is we've taken the IQ 0 layer, which is the input of that information, and brought it into a single location, right? If I could say anything about why I joined the company back in the day, that was the one thing. I thought, can we link all of this information from an email, right, into what we would call a shipment? The second layer is the extract and correlate layer, right? This is where we start to take that extracted data and make decisions. Now, random data across the screen doesn't do anybody good, right? So what this layer does is it makes decisions about what we need. Who is the importer? Who is the consignee, right? Who's the buyer? All these things, if anyone here has looked at these documents, are extremely varied across all document sets. MERS doesn't know who your buyer is. They don't know who your consignee is. They're probably using the same information they put in 20 years ago, right? Back in the day, in the AS400. That's what I'm familiar with, right? The second layer is the most important layer. So this is where we talk about the intelligence, right? It's taking that information, bouncing it against various other things, your parts databases, right? Ontology, history, making decisions. So for instance, maybe your HTS code requires meter squared, but that's nowhere in the documentation, right? Yeah, thank you, right? That's a great example, right? It doesn't care about kilos, it doesn't care about count, because all those things drive the price, right? So what this layer has done is it's looking at HTS codes. It's the same layer that Angela was talking about earlier, right, of how we're identifying what do we need to do, how do we need to do it, what am I missing, right, in order to perform the activity. The IQ3 layer is where we transform that data into downstream processes. So the downstream processes can be a brokerage entry, right? It can be a brokerage entry, or it can be maybe we're going to feed another system, an ERP or some other brokerage platform, right? And the fourth layer, the IQ layer, is what you guys will see, right, is what Brian, part of what that layer goes into the Brian's world. So when you guys are out here today, some of you have met Brian, right? Awesome dude, right? But he's going to kind of show you what reporting does, right? Again, these are the layers. So what I'm going to do now, let's meet Sarah, okay? Some of you have laughed, but Sarah's licensed customs broker, right? She has 7 years in customs experience, probably a little bit longer than that, right? She probably fell into it because her uncle or aunt hired her, right? She's done thousands of shipments, right? She's got 3 main trade lanes. What is Sarah's issues, right? What is she trying to solve? So Sarah spends all day doing the things on the left. Well, yeah, on the right, on the left, right? What does KlearNow do? We help drive these behaviors through our AI-powered system. Good? Second persona, which is probably some of you, right, is Joe Smith. Now, he's the VP of Operations. He's the guy that yells at you when the numbers don't look correctly, right? Correct? But he's got a whole nother set of pain points and what it needs, right? So he needs to know where the bolts are in the box, right? He needs to know what's coming into his warehouse function, right? And some part of this, he probably needs to know how much are they spending, right? So now I'm going to get into the demo. So we got the 2 personas down? Great. Okay. I'm going to move to the demo. So as we talked about earlier, when KlearNow started, we really drove our activity through email, right? And so here I've prepped an email. I've got it ready to go, right? And this could be Sarah. It could be one of her suppliers, maybe our manufacturer, right? Some other entity could be sending this email in, right? Or maybe you have a complex scenario where you have a bunch of processes and procedures. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the email. Okay, we're gonna give it a second. All right, so what's happening now, if you remember back in that IQ 0 layer, right? We're taking that IQ0 layer, we're extracting that information, classifying the documents, right? Because we need to know what the documents are. Then we're extracting that information. So let's take a look and see where we land. Ambiguous sign-in. All right, so here it looks kind of small, but here you can see we've got the first email. The first email is the one that we sent. Those are 2 other emails that came in over the last couple hours, right? So what we've done here is we've extracted the documentation. Now, we don't change the names, right? We give it the types. You see the document types here. We don't change the names, right? There's a reason for that, right? Because sometimes we want to maybe go back and get information and understand where it came from. So within that, we've extracted the information, and let's choose the commercial invoice. I see. So some of you spent some time with me out in the lobby, and I'll do a little bit of demo for you guys later, right? But here you see the commercial invoice information, right? And then the extraction of the line level details. Does anybody know what a worm gear reducer is? Yeah, it's kind of cool sounding. So here's the extraction. From here, again, we'll take a look at a couple more documents just so you can see the extraction. Okay. So let me talk about this upper corner because I get this conversation all the time. Salespeople come to me, clients come to me, those who don't trust AI come to me, right? And they say, talk to me about confidence score. So you can see here the confidence score is 99.3, right? And later on in the lobby, I'll show you what that means. But it's not just the data accuracy. It's, is the document fit for the purpose that we identified in the framework, right? That's important to understand because what we see a lot of times, invoice, 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 right? One's a freight invoice, one's a broker invoice, and one's the actual commercial invoice, right? So the confidence scoring helps us determine not only data quality, but data content, right? And does it make sense? So most of your commercial invoices, if we were to draw back to the commercial invoice real quick, right? Most of your commercial invoices will have a total quantity at the bottom. We'll have sometimes a quantity and a dollar value, right? Part of the purpose of the AI is to look at the line segments and make sure I've got 5 lines. So this is an easy one, right? It's pretty concise, it's pretty clear, right? But some of you, somebody's got parts, right, may have a commercial invoice that's 156 lines, right? Or if you're a small, or if you're a auto manufacturer, you may have 856 lines, right? So what the AI is also trying to do is just like, did I extract all the information that's necessary for the downstream process? Moving on, right, we're going to go back here. And we're going to go back one other layer. Now what we're ready to do, right, which it's been doing this behind the scenes anyway, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to move to what our IQ2 layer. So if you remember, our IQ2 layer was all about compliance and validation, and that's where, as Amit talked about, that's where the agentic framework plays a part, right? It's looking for certain things. First, it's looking to say, do I have all the information to build a shipment? The second thing it's doing is, where do I get things that I don't know? Secondly, am I missing something? But in this case, we're going to go ahead and run over to the IQ2 layer. All right, so this is our IQ2 layer. Our transaction is landed in this process, right? And now Sarah, remember Sarah, right? We're going to go back to Sarah. Sarah's going to come in here and she's going to take a look. All right, what's going on? So I've got some documents and I've got some information, right? Now Sarah didn't do this, right? This is everything we built in that framework of extraction and compliance and validation to bring this information in here. So Sarah's going to come up, she's going to click Start Job, right? And then she's going to take a look at the parties. Why are their parties important? I remember I talked about not all parties are necessarily correct on all of the documentation, right? That's where the self-learning process comes into play, right? Because sometimes, as you guys know, there's hundreds of parties on these things. So she's going to take a look at the parties. She's going to tell you, look at the header information, right? What ports it's coming in, is the master bill, is the manifest quantity correct, right? She's going to take a look at that, Why is that? Anyone who's done this for long enough knows manifest quantity is incorrect, and it doesn't get released, right? And then you spend about a half a day arguing with the carrier about what you need to do. So then she's going to go and she's going to take a look at the line items, right? And now she's going to expand those line items. Let's see. And now she's got all that line level detail, right? When this pulled the part numbers from the parts database and the appropriate HTS code, and then the validation layers ran, it extracted the Chapter 99s, okay? Now, don't argue with me if you think these are incorrect because we just changed something Friday. Haven't been implemented yet, but I'm just giving you an example, right? So now what that she's going to do, she said, hey, some of these might have steel, and I want to not pay the full amount, right? So she's going to click on the 232 button. There we go. And it's going to say, oh, hey, remember I talked about the worm gear reducer flagged for steel, right? On the other side of that, there was another one called the head hex bolt, right? Zinc. She's going to expand these lines. Now, there's a couple ways we're going to get here. If you're really sophisticated and you've been very strong with your suppliers, you probably have a group of 452 certificates for your associated products. In some cases, that might not be true. So you may receive the information via email, right? As a broker, you can say, hey, would you guys like me to claim 232? And if we say yes, then I need some values. So for demo purposes, we're going to say, hey, you know what? That's 1,000. This is 100. Sorry, not the right key. All right, we're going to scroll down. And we're going to enter in 50. Right, and 1. And now we're going to retry the lines. All right, now we can see that it split the two lines to the non-metal and the metal content. All right, and that's the worm gear reducer. And now we're into the hex head bolt. So what she's going to do now, Sarah, is going to say, okay, great, that looks good. I checked all my documentation, right? That's the human component that still lives here, right? And she's going to go ahead and click confirm and save. All right? So what she's doing now is having the system apply that to the lines, right? So she's not entering lines, she's not rekeying information, she's not copying something, right? And then what's going to happen is it's going to expand the lines. And now we're going to see, there's your worm gear reducer. 002 sequence 2, right, is the primary line that has no metal content. And 003 sequence 3 is the metal content framework, right, that we entered into the process. Now, when she files the entry, you raise your hand, what'll happen? She'll save a lot of money, right? The importer will save a lot of money. From here, she says, okay, I'm done. All right, this will take a second. So I want to talk about there's two processes we have in the world today, right, where we're approached many times within our organization. Number one, hey, Angela, I want you to be my customs broker, right? And we'd file a customs entry, right? We'd find a third-party broker, we'd set you up with that relationship, and we move on. The other instance is I'm a large freight forwarder, I'm a large operator, I have my own system, I use another system, whatever it is, okay? What this is showing us is the ability to extract this information and send it in that downstream process. It's important, right? Somebody like the brown guys or the purple guys, right? They're not necessarily going to leverage our U.S. Customs broker system. Why? Because they have something on global scale, right? Their entire operations running on one system throughout the United States and various countries. All right, so from here, if we needed to, we could send that to the downstream process. Good? All right, right here. Now we're in job back to entry. So now Sarah says, hey, I'm complete. I'm finished. Right? You see that line in there, I'm finished. All right, now we're going to switch personas. All right, so we're ready for Joe? All right, so Joe, like some of you who are our customers, has access to the system, right? Gave him a sign-on, we gave him a login, we gave him some training, right? And Joe's going to come in here, and I think one of the benefits we have of our system, which I don't see in other systems, is Joe actually has, or his compliance people, or his teams, right? Joe has access to see the entry. So if Joe sees something wrong, right, he can help make a correction. Or he has someone on his team that can help make a correction. That's very important because of the $1.2 million mistake, right? Then from here, Joe's going to say, you know what, Jason, I have other needs. Remember? Joe had a bunch of needs, right? So Joe says, hey, I want track trace. I want track trace, right? I want you to show me where my stuff is. It's part of the opportunity within this framework. We captured all that data, right? And now what Joe can see here is the journey. We'll go to the journey, right? Joe can take a look at the map. Joe can see what's some of the information that's in the map, the associated movements, right? Joe can head over to shipments, okay? And right here, Joe can see these are certain activities because Joe's an importer. There's certain activities that are occurring, right? And he might want to keep up with those or have his teams or his transportation leaders or his warehouse people deal with that. And then he can see the various documents, right? And we'll take a look. So if we are filing an entry for Joe, right, this is what the entry process, this is the entry. And so Joe, we're part of Joe's team, but not only getting the data from the data warehouse, right, they can also review the document right at their fingertips. Or if they want to send it to the accounting department because the accounting department wants to book the, whatever the values are, right, and send it to the thing. So that's Joe's role. Good? All right, great. So the last part of this is while we were performing all of these activities, right, we've been consuming that data into our framework. All those touch points, all those decisions. Because what is the second part of this? Right? I need the reporting. I want to look at the reporting. Some reporting tells you a story. Other reporting is validation and making sure that things were filed correctly. But I need the reporting. So I'm going to just talk quickly about 3 types of reports. So there's on the water. And this is, I think, what Angela hinted to in her conversation. The on the water report takes all of that data we've been collecting while it's still moving, right, and provides you some insights about what's going on, right? So maybe in this case, you need to get a certificate. Maybe in this case, you need to check your HTS code, right, or something else. The second sort of metric here is Trump on trade KPIs, okay? So this is all of the stuff that you've been paying. This isn't one of your customers, right? I just wanted you to know. All the stuff, it's all of that stuff we've collected, all that data, now rolled up into something that you can see, right? Everyone knows this is the big one right here, right? This is the elephant in the room, per se. And then the last part of this is the post-entry audit. So in this case, you get to see and say, okay, what are my shipments? What are my transactions? And then which ones of those possibly could have IEPA and then maybe be in something we'll be working on next week, right? Or when so-and-so tells us how we can get our refunds, right? That process. So why am I proud to be here? Right? I'm proud to be here because we built the only global collaborative platform that doesn't care who you are in the process. It doesn't care if you use 7 freight forwarders. It doesn't care if you use Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd, right, or Delta Airlines, or FedEx or UPS. It doesn't care about that, right? It focuses on the compliance teams. It focuses on the importers, right, and allows you to go to one place to find out what's going on within your trade framework. I appreciate your time. Thanks, Ben.